Welcome to the What's Your Truth podcast, the show that not only showcases the best of independent artists, but also explores what inspires them, what drives them, and what they consider their fundamental purpose as an artist to be. With me today is Jason Kaplan, a man of many projects and packing a boatload of talent. Jason takes his influences from the likes of guys like Danny Carey, Chad Smith, Stuart Copeland, and honestly, he truly holds his own among these giants. A consummate professional with an insane work ethic, Jason's unique brand of pocket and groove can be heard on recordings by bands including Gunpoint Alibi, Magnolia Drive, and Burning Red. Jason also has over 10 years of live touring experience, opening for top shelf acts including Bret Michaels, Lita Ford, Saliva, and more. He's a sonic asset to any band that has the good fortune to have him on their roster, and he adds style, flair, and an explosion here and there to every stage he crashes. As diverse as they come and the coolest human you'd ever want to cross paths with, it's a pleasure to have him on the show today. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Kaplan.
Oh, thank you for the introduction, Johnnie. I appreciate it. Glad
Oh,
to
yeah.
be here.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we talked last.
I know. I feel like just with the pandemic and everything, we got so caught up and so distant and so just like, dealing with our own stuff and whatnot. It's hard to really just stay in contact and stay up to date on things.
Right on. Well, here we are to remedy that.
Exactly. Time to make up for lost time.
That's right. Well, let's get started, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. So the first question I got is, how did you decide that you wanted to become a musician?
So I always find this story really funny because like music is my entire life right now, but um I actually had no intention of ever playing music. I had tried out guitar. I was absolutely horrible at it. I hated it, like just didn't have the patience or the coordination to learn it. And funny enough, my parents, they had a free Groupon for like or they had a Groupon for a free drum lesson. And they're like, "You're gonna try this out, you need to find your big thing, your activity that you like to do." And so they signed me up for this drum lesson. I went and just immediately from when I sat behind the drums, it was kind of just one of those love at first sight moments. And after my lesson on the way back home, I begged and pleaded my parents, like, can I please, go back for another lesson? Can you get me the drum book he recommended? Can you get me sticks? Can you get me a practice pad? And
Mhm.
they did and everything. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, I'll say him. Boy, what a history you've blazed, man. Jeez.
Thank you. I mean, 11 years later, 12 years later, and still here.
Still here, still kicking. Kicking ass is what you're doing. So what was the first experience you remember having with music?
I mean, like, I do remember my first drum lesson, like I kind of mentioned, like just sitting behind the drum set and just like not knowing what to do with everything in front of me. I found that to be so cool. I had no, all these different drums and cymbals, and how do you make that sound like music? And I just remember just hitting things and flailing my arms around and stuff. And that's probably like the earliest memory I have of drums, or just like, love for music. Um, and I would also say, like, my first time being on stage as well, that was pretty memorable. I was heavily inspired by Tommy Lee growing up,
Mhm.
from Motley Crue, and, I remember I wanted to look like Tommy Lee on stage, and so I
Mhm.
wore, like, baggy shorts, a wife beater, and a fedora, and then my parents, being as supportive as they were, we did a bunch of temporary tattoos to give me sleeves, like neck tattoos and stuff, and like chest tattoos, so that I could like look like Tommy Lee essentially.
Your
And
parents sound awesome.
what's that?
Your parents sound awesome.
Oh man, they were, they've always been very supportive of like what I've been doing. And I feel like that's rare to find, especially with musicians.
Yeah, and I mean, I think every parent wants to be supportive and they try in their own way, but to find ones that are that supportive in a way that really makes sense and really is not only them wanting to, but it's really what's needed. That is tough to find. You are definitely lucky that way. Good for you.
Right, right. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think you can find like surface level support in a lot of parents, but like then when it really comes time for your kid to be like, I want to pursue this as a career, or like I'm really wanting to take this seriously, then it's like, is that support, is it conditional or not, essentially?
Yes, and that's a good way of putting it. It's like the support where it's like, well, as long as you have a fallback plan,
Right.
stuff like that. And it's like, so no, yeah, you're totally right. That's actually a great way of putting it. Is it's not conditional support; it's unconditional.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge.
Absolutely.
Right
Yeah.
on. And then, so I know I touched on a few on the intro, and you just mentioned Tommy Lee, but who are the biggest influences on your work and why?
Ooh. So I mean, like Tommy Lee again, yeah, definitely one of them. I would also say like not trying to brag about myself or anything, but when I've had people come up to me after shows, I'd say the drummer they compare me to the most, or that they see the most of in me, is Tommy Lee. They're always like, "Damn, that you look like Tommy Lee when you drum," or like that's a Tommy Lee type of lick there. So I've
Yeah,
definitely gotten that a lot in the past. But as far as inspirations go, you kind of mentioned it in the beginning. Chad Smith from Red Hot Chili Peppers,
yeah,
Danny Carey from Tool, Stuart Copeland. I mean, I love the way he blends reggae and rock together. And
yes.
I'm trying to think of who else. I mean, even some like more modern drummers per se, or more heavier drummers such as like Dan Searle from the band Architects.
Okay.
Um, I also really like Alex Shellnut from A Day to Remember. They've also been, very influential on like my double bass playing, and especially as I was getting into like metalcore and pop punk and playing in a lot of those bands, they were hugely influential on my playing as well.
Awesome. Right
Yeah.
on. And then, what's the weirdest thing that's ever inspired you?
Ooh, the weirdest thing that's ever inspired me. That's a really good question. I for me, like as a drummer, like this is kind of like some of my, I mean, yeah, it's some of my inspirations, but it's kind of like a weird inspiration to have. I believe that like when you find inspirations as a drummer, you should have some that like, I don't wanna, like, throw people under the bus, but maybe they're not the best, like, technical player, but they put on a really good show. And then you also wanna have your really good technical players, but then you're sitting there yawning watching them play, but it's like, "Wow, that's pretty incredible, the skills that they have." And I think that you can combine those and that you can, like, put some theatrics into it. So, like, for me, I grew up watching wrestling, like WWE,
Oh,
and
interesting.
and for me, like, I always kinda wanted to be, like, a wrestler that drums, if that makes sense. Like, you had really, like, I don't know if you know a whole lot about, like, wrestling or any
I
of the
used to watch
wrestling.
wrestling as a kid. I actually know a fair amount. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So, like, Jeff Hardy is my favorite wrestler of all time, and so, like, for me, I always kinda wanted to be like the Jeff Hardy of the music scene, or the Jeff Hardy on the drums.
Oh, that's
And I
fun.
think that like you can combine that like showmanship and that charisma and that energy that like these wrestlers have, and apply it as like a theatrical musician or as a drummer. And that would definitely be the weirdest inspiration that I have, is like wrestlers.
That's a great answer, actually, man. Wow, that's hilarious. And I can see your point 100%. That's awesome.
Yeah, and you have, like, so many, like, metalhead wrestlers out there nowadays, or, I mean, just even, like, growing up, I mean, Edge would come out to an Alter Bridge song,
Yeah.
and, like, you have Chris Jericho, who's also the singer for Fozzy and is a wrestler, and I think that's just the coolest thing in the world.
Is he the one that's also? I think I've seen Jericho perform with Body Count, if I'm not mistaken,
I
which is the Slayer Ice T crossover thing. I think
Yes.
I saw him at a Dimebag Daryl jam at Nam once. I think he also sang with Body Count.
Yes,
It's
that
pretty
I think I know what you're talking about. That sounds right. He, like, he'll show up in the most random places to go play music with people. Yeah,
totally
yeah.
awesome. And how has your art influenced other people?
Um, I hope it has, first off. Like, that's kind of been my goal as a musician, is to help and influence other people, so I hope it has. I would say, like, in what ways? I definitely, like, hope that, like, I can be more than just a friend, like a mentor or a good support system to have for fellow musicians, whether they be younger, older, the same age as me. I would say that, like, I definitely try to be as supportive as I can. Definitely try to reach out and support, small artists and musicians in any way that I can. And I hope that that does rub off on people, and I hope that that does make a difference at the end of the day, ultimately.
Totally. And that's awesome that you had that viewpoint of wanting to help the up and comers to kind of get to where you are. That's actually really awesome.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think that, like, there's been this attitude in the scene for so long of, like, it's a competition, and we're all out to get each other, but the reality is like we're all in this struggle together, and, like, if someone else succeeds, then, like, you should be helping other people succeed with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally agree 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we all have the same roots as musicians, I feel like.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah.
like you said, we're all kind of here trying to do the same thing, and it's definitely it's not it's a team sport being a musician, being an artist. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what it is through and through. I'd compare it to any professional sport, really.
Same.
Yeah.
Right on. So do you have any pre-show or pre-studio rituals?
Ooh, so I am kind of like a method drummer. Like, how you have method actors where they'll live the lifestyle and they'll get in the same headspace as the character that they're going to be playing. I'm very much like a method drummer. If I'm like playing a pop punk show, I got to be getting in high spirits, high energy. Um, Additionally, like, it even goes down to the attire. Like, what am I wearing with a pop punk band as compared to what am I wearing when I play a country gig? I'm not going to show up in the van slides and shorts for the country gig. I think they won't even let me in the venue. So I'm very much like a method drummer. If I'm going into like an indie recording session, I want to, dress a certain way, be listening to indie music that entire week leading up to the recording session. I want to be tuning my drums a certain way, using different cymbals a certain way. And that also goes for live shows. What am I listening to before I go on stage? How am I dressing? What kind of a headspace am I in before I go out there? And I would say that that's definitely been like the way I've prepared for really anything drumming wise. It's all about like where my mindset is at, and also just like how do I appear? How have I been preparing?
That makes total sense. It's funny that it's there are certain actors, you're right, like Christian Bale's one, Val Kilmer's one,
Mhm.
where it's like you're kind of like the Val Kilmer of drummers, where you're just completely immersive in your approach to the gig you're doing. That's really great.
Exactly, and I think that people also pick up on that in the audience as well, of like, oh, like he's really, acting the part, or he's really able to, get his point across with his music. Um, and that's, been my goal.
Yeah, and I could see that how there's like a cohesiveness that creates not just being there on stage playing, but actually visually not being distracting from the style. That makes actually a tremendous amount of sense.
Uh-huh. Right. Right.
Right. So, what risks, if any, have you personally taken for the sake of your music?
I mean, really a lot. I've turned down jobs. I've quit jobs due to my music career. Telling a job, hey, I need to be able to take off time to go on tour, you know, for 2 weeks at a time, a week at a time. A lot of jobs are not really understanding of that or accepting of that. And so, I mean, I've had to sacrifice job offers and job opportunities in the past. I think also just like the amount of time that it takes to be a musician. I think like a lot of people who aren't musicians only see it for what, on the surface level of like, oh, they just played an hour set and that's it. They don't see the load in, they don't see the load out, they don't see the sound check, they don't see the countless hours of practice. They don't see everything that goes into making yourself a musician. And I would definitely say the sacrifice of time. It's just, especially like where I'm at right now, I'm in 5 or 6 different bands,
Whoa.
and that's a lot of time. I don't have like nights anymore to myself. I mean, even me being able to sit down with you tonight is a very rare thing and whatnot. So like just the sacrifice of time. I think a lot of people don't understand just how much time it takes to be a musician.
Yeah, and I think there's a kind of this prevailing mentality for people that aren't like, and it's not even, they don't even mean this badly, but I think people have a tendency to view it as a hobby, something you do for fun in your spare time. But that's, as you know, when you're a musician, it's like what you live and breathe and eat and do. It's not, it's completely opposite. It's like two full-time jobs.
I mean, it really is. I mean, if you literally look at it hourly, sure, you might not be making, as much money or really any money at all, but the time is certainly there. The time of a full-time job is certainly there.
100%.
Yeah.
What's the craziest risk you've ever seen another artist take for their craft?
Ooh. I've seen a lot of artists take like publicity stunts, especially on like TikTok and stuff. They'll do something really outrageous, and that will you know get people talking. That'll get the buzz going about them. Um, Shoot, that's a really good question because I'm trying to think like, every artist I feel like takes risks, but like, hmm. I mean, like, can it be a big artist? Like, or does it have to
Sure.
be someone I
Pick
know?
me. Whatever answers the question for you, man. It's your interview.
Um, let's see. I think like artists that aren't afraid to push the boundaries of their genre or push the boundaries of like what music they've done before. Um, I think like one band that comes to mind is like Turnstile, the hardcore band.
Okay.
Like, looking back at their earlier material, they did still have a little bit of, like, a pop aspect to them, but, like, they were definitely more of a hardcore band, and then, they put out their record, last year, what was that? Glow On, and, it was more of, like, a dream pop, hardcore rock indie album, like, very different from what they did in the past, and I mean, it skyrocketed their success. I mean, they took that risk of, like, not knowing which way it was gonna go and if it was gonna pay off, and I mean, they've been on late night TV shows, they're doing arena tours now. I mean, I have friends who saw Turnstile play in clubs with a 250 capacity or 100 capacity a few years ago, and here they are playing like, you know, literally arenas and stuff. And I don't think that would have been possible without them putting out that album that they did put out.
Right on.
Yeah.
Awesome. What's one thing about you that would shock everyone to know?
Um, Ooh, that would shock everybody to know. I mean, this is more of just like not even me as a musician. A lot of people don't know that I speak Portuguese.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah. What's that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't really like tell a lot of people. It doesn't really come up a lot in conversation. I don't really speak it a lot, like unless I'm talking to somebody that is Brazilian.
Yeah.
But my partner that I've been with for 4 years now, her entire family is Brazilian, and that's the reason I started learning Portuguese was to be able to communicate with them and whatnot. And yeah, so a lot of people don't know that like I speak conversational to almost fluent Portuguese.
Wow, that's cool. And what a great reason for doing that too, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I love learning languages as it is. And then I saw my opportunity and I was like, well, shoot, like, here's a new language to learn. Here's a good opportunity to learn it. Might as well go for it.
wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Really,
yeah. And I don't really like tell a lot of people about that.
right on. It shocked me. So what's the one thing or the one tool that you absolutely cannot live without as an artist and why?
um, Social media, that's one of them. I think as much as as much as I have my personal gripes with social media, professionally I need it. And honestly, the reality is that like social media is a beautiful thing for getting your name out there as a musician these days. And you kind of almost need it. I hate to say that, but you kind of almost need that online presence as a musician these days. And so social media, that would be one. And drum keys.
Yes, good
They
call.
are they are a very rare thing to come by because you'll have it in your hand 1 second, and I'm sure you know, just as guitar picks, they
Mhm.
are gone the next minute. They are gone the next second.
I've known many a drummer freak out because he can't find his drum key right
Oh,
before a show.
yep. Nope, that is me every show, every band practice. In fact, at this point, with my main band Magnolia Grove, we've actually gotten to the point now where my bassist and our guitarist, they both carry a drum key for me because chances are I've lost mine.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's cool though that they do that for you because man, yeah,
I
that
know I got real lucky. They're real nice.
you guys gotta say you got in with some good people for sure.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, they're real accommodating to the drummer that can't remember any of his stuff. Yeah.
So, what has been the most difficult piece of music for you to create and why?
Ooh. So let's see. I've I've had to record to scratch tracks in the past where musicians have literally given me this has been for both bands that I've been in and also just like been hired to just do like a single EP, etc. There have been musicians that have given me scratch tracks where it is not it is an acoustic guitar line and a bass line, and that is the entire song. There is
Oh,
nothing else to it, and they're like, "Okay, go ahead, do your drum part to this." I had, on the Gunpoint Alibi record that I had done, last year, there was one song in particular that I had gotten the scratch track to, and this wasn't like anything, towards them or anything. We just kind of like had a time crunch on this one song. The rest of them were fine. It was this one song, but the entire chorus that I got was a synth part and a bass line,
oh
and
my
it was do your drum part to that. And ended up turning out phenomenal in the end, and I'm really happy with the product in the end. But um that was definitely a challenge. And I've had countless occasions with other artists where they're like, here's a bass line and some acoustic guitar that's not even played to a metronome. Go write a drum part.
oh my god, yeah, I know, and that's the toughest one. There's like it's not to a click, and then it's like, oh, and
Yeah,
I've had some people that have come into the studio and they're like, I have a vocal, I have lyrics, and I have a guitar part. They come in and lay that down, and then it's like, here, build a track around this, and I can. I love doing it. It's a great challenge, but
oh, no, it really is, but
yeah,
yeah, no, you'll be sitting there of like, "Okay, I need to listen to the click, I can't be listening to what the guitar is doing, but I need to be writing my drum part to what the guitar is doing, to what the song is doing."
yeah, and you have no sense of dynamic. And in a case like that, I'm like, man, you have like no sense of dynamic or anything. Like, wow.
Absolutely, absolutely, it's very hard yeah, to find what sound are you going for here? Yeah, no, I'd say it's definitely been one of my biggest challenges. Um Also, like, recording a metalcore album, that was a huge challenge. Um, it definitely forced me as a drummer to, like, strengthen up my double bass and
Mm.
get a lot more accurate with it. Because I think when we tend to go faster, we tend to get a little sloppier, and so it kind of forced me to, like, maintain that tightness while also still going really fast at the same time.
Right on.
Yeah.
Awesome. If you were going to write a book about your career up to this point, what would you title it?
Hmm. I've always had this as, like, a book name idea if I ever were to write a book, which I would eventually like to do later on down the road. So,
Hey,
there's a little shameless self-plug there. But let's see. I think The Hallway of Opportunity.
okay.
Yeah, like, cause I don't know, I kind of view life at least as a hallway, and you have a bunch of doors, and you can open those doors, and those doors might lead to other hallways, or you don't know what they will lead to, but that hallway is long, and yeah, I don't know. I've that's always just stuck with me, and I've always just thought that would be a nifty little name for a book.
I like that a lot, actually. I loved like even getting the visual of that. And you're totally correct. I mean, life is just it's a hallway, and you get to pick what doors you go through and where they lead. And like you said, could be another hallway, could be a brick wall. Who knows? That's the fun of
Exactly. Right, right.
it. Right on. So, what are your plans for world domination?
So let's see. I'll be announcing my presidential campaign next year.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But let's see. I just want to like keep playing music and let more people know about my craft, and also too, inspire more people. If I can get one kid to pick up a pair of drumsticks for the first time, then I've done my job. I can die peacefully then. And if I can, touch people's hearts and their souls with my music, then I've also done my job. It doesn't matter if it's one person, 1,000 people, a million people. To me, it's just, having an impact. Um, and I think as musicians, as human beings, we only continue to keep evolving, keep getting better, keep changing. And for me, I want to just keep doing that, become 1% better every day, become a better drummer every day, become a better musician, become a better person every day. And I think that um that's the plan for world domination right there, is waking up every morning and being like, okay, what can I do? What's one small thing I can do to become 1% better today?
That is awesome. That's actually a really great way to like, that actually makes it doable. I mean, because there's again, I
Yeah.
think we talked about this a little earlier. People are trying to like do everything all at once, but if you look at it
Oh
that
yeah.
way, yeah, if you got 1% better every day, I mean, that's how would you not then succeed at some point? That's huge, and that most people can confront the idea of doing 1% better each day. That's really smart.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think like we all tend, I mean, I've even struggled with it myself, and I still do, of like setting unrealistic like expectations, or trying to look at the big picture without looking at all of the small steps that get you to that final goal or that big picture. And for me, like, kind of where I've found my peace of mind is being able to be like, you know can I learn, one new drum lick? Can I get 1 BPM faster today? Can I get tighter on this one part in a song today? Can I write one line of lyrics today? And you look at it over the course of a month or a year, and that's massive progress. And it's definitely helped me a lot to be able to like deconstruct how to achieve my goals.
Awesome. Right
Yeah.
on, man. And then I have one more question for you, and just to revisit the intro of the show a little bit. So again, the show, it's not just about showcasing the best of independent artists, but also exploring what inspires them, what drives them, and what they consider their fundamental purpose as an artist to be. So Jason, what's your truth?
My truth is that music is probably the one universal language that we can all speak. I think music and food, I don't know, I'd say that there's a close tie there, but being being that I've been a drummer for 12 years now, for me, music, holds a little more of a special place in my heart. And I think, my truth is that music has the power to evoke emotions um evoke emotions and get a point across better than any words ever can. I've been in really dark places or just had really horrible days or really great days, and there's been songs that have been able to speak to me better than any person ever could, better than I even could describe it myself. There's been songs that have been able to evoke emotions out of me that nothing else could. Um, and so I think, music is the one universal language that we can all speak. And I think that in its very essence, is I don't know, it's as pure as we can get. It's literally it's the sound of your soul. That's the best way I can put it.
Oh yes, I love the sound of your soul. That sounds like an album title or something, man. That's so.
Right?
What a beautiful way of putting it, man. Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah, no, I
Well,
I I I definitely think that I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. There's
yeah,
probably a song out there that can describe it better than I just ever did, but it's the sound of your soul. When you listen to a song, that is if it's a band, that is 5 different souls right there putting their story, their lives into that, and you're hearing that. You're hearing a story. You're hearing someone's life, essentially.
totally.
Yeah.
Wow, what a great way to end an interview. My God, that's awesome.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm not good at the whole interview thing, so I'm glad that, I'm glad that that was a strong finish there.
oh, I think the whole thing was strong. I thought you were incredible at interviewing. Are you kidding me?
Oh, well, thank you, man. You're a great interviewer.
Oh, well, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
before we end off, I did want to take 60 seconds just if there's anything you want to plug, all things Jason Kaplan. Go.
Okay. Let's see. Magnolia Grove, Burning Red, Losers Club. They're a pop punk band out here in Denver. Bucked Off. They're a country cover band that I play in. Just Trophy Wife. They're a hardcore band that I play in. Just gotta throw them all out there, give them a
Yeah.
nice shout out. Magnolia Grove, we're going on tour end of January, and more. We have another tour planned for later on in the summer, as well as some new music coming up. And then overall, I'm just staying busy. I have tons of new, singles, new albums, new EPs coming out, and yeah, that's really all there is to it.
Well, that's a lot. That's awesome. Hell yeah, man. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show, and especially as busy as you are, man. I know that it's not easy making time for things, so I really, really appreciate that you
Oh
made the
no,
time tonight, man.
no, that when you told me about this opportunity, I no, thank you for having me on here. I'm so glad I got to go on here. I'm so glad we got to catch up as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And guys, until next time, this has been the What's Your Truth podcast. I'll see you on the next episode. Later.
Yeah, you follow your own rules and you preach them on to me. But you don't think before you act, and you ain't got no business with me. You know, no. But then what's your truth? Oh, what's your truth?